everyone. My name is Natalie McCracken, and I lead marketing here at Pattern Ag. And today I have with me Danielle Watts, who is our Vice President of Data Science. So we, a couple weeks ago, talked a little bit about the validation and accuracy of our soybean cyst nematode test. And today we are back to talk about one of our other flagship tests, which is our corn rootworm test. So Danielle is on today to talk to us a little bit about the testing behind it, how we know that this test is accurate, how we validate this test. And up until now, everyone has just used sticky traps as sort of the forward-looking test in order to see what's happening in their field and what corn rootworm is doing. Otherwise, the damage has been done and it is what it is. And by that point, you kind of can't do anything until the next year. So Danielle, can you talk to us a little bit about sticky traps and how they've been used and maybe kind of the downfall of them?
Yeah, sticky traps have been typically the way that growers have been able to evaluate what their next season's risks are going to be, but it comes with a few limitations. And so, for one, sticky traps are really evaluating the adults that are flying around and are not necessarily indicative that those adults are laying their eggs in the soil. And so you can have a little bit of a mismatch between how many beetles are connecting to the sticky traps and actually what's going on in the soil for the larval feeding the next year. There's also a bit of a fidelity of the species that some species prefer the yellow sticky traps and some prefer the other color of sticky traps. And so, especially in those regions where you have both northern and western overlapping populations, you can see that one organism is preferentially sticking to those sticky traps. And so that can give you a little bit of a mismatch of what's happening at the adults versus what's going to happen in the larval feeding the next year. And then the final part of it is that anybody who's done sticky traps knows that these are incredibly time-consuming traps to do. You have to go out while the corn is at its peak height and evaluate on a weekly basis how many adults have stuck to those traps, and it's just very time consuming. What Pattern Ag has is a very simple test that goes in after harvest, a single point of evaluation, and is able to actually detect the number of eggs in the soil that we can then evaluate for what's our risk the following season. That really gives growers a high confidence that they either really do need to use a trait stack of some sort in their field, or gives them the confidence to make a call that we can go with a conventional seed variety.
Awesome. And so we have a very specific testing protocol for our sampling, and we try to get all the way across the field and really evenly distributed when we're going through each zone. Why do we do that, especially for corn?
Yeah, fantastic question. So corn rootworm in particular, when the females are laying their eggs, they're looking for a very specific set of soil conditions. They're looking for a certain type of soil moisture, a certain soil texture. They're also looking for there to be cracks in the soil so that they can lay their eggs in the cracks. And so they're really moving around looking for those. And that means in some fields where you really have that soil condition present across most of the field, you can see corn rootworm eggs sort of distributed across the field. But more commonly, it's smaller pockets of the field where the females are really able to say, this is the sort of condition I'm targeting for my egg laying. That means you have high spottiness in a field. And so you really have to get at enough density to capture those spots to really be able to evaluate, is there enough corn rootworm presence in this field to have an economically distinguishing yield outcome the next year? Meaning, is this a small spot in a field? Is it a larger spot in the field? Am I at risk of losing yield if I do not use a trait stacked or some form of seed treatment for preventing that larval damage?
Gotcha. And so with that being said, and it's spotty and, am I going to have enough economic impact? How do we figure that out then when we're giving our thresholds of low, medium, high risk? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so in 2021, we did a trial with Intent. That's a company that is a crop research organization. And in that trial, we actually evaluated the egg counts going into the crop season against the larval feeding in season. So that's how we developed our calibrations. That's how we are able to really validate our insights that they are linked to actual larval damage. And with that, we use the node injury score rating that comes out of Iowa State University, which is really looking at how much of the nodes have been fed to the point where you are likely to see an economically important loss of yield. And so with that, about a quarter of a node is considered the first threshold for you're likely to see yield loss, especially under drought conditions. And that is where we have our moderate risk threshold. And then above that, you see increasing rates of damage. 3 is sort of the peak where you've got 3 nodes lost. And at that point in time, you're at high risk for lodging and a host of other issues where the plants can actually like fall over under a higher wind event. So high risk is really a significant potential yield loss, both in terms of like the physical damage as well as the yield loss from the root loss.
Everyone, there is no way to know what your pressure is in your field unless you test your own field. Your neighbor could have had a horrible year and your field can be clean, or it could be the opposite where you go in and we test for you and we find out that you have a large spot of high risk in your field and your neighbor hasn't seen anything. So the only way to truly know what your risk is by testing with Pattern Ag, and that's with our pressure panel, which includes corn rootworm, soybean cyst nematode, and sudden death syndrome. So thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing all that today. And everybody else, if you want more information, please go to our website at www.pattern.ag. Thanks so much.